Here I am, a couple minutes early. Lamiaceae officinalis. Sounds like a Harry Potter spell, doesn't it? Well, the Lamiaceae officinalis, that is the botanical name for rosemary. This is rosemary. Yeah, this is rosemary. I know. What do you think? My cat's name is Rosemary. So today we are gonna be referring to rosemary, the herb, not the cat. Hope everybody's doing okay today. Looks like, kind of looks stormy, kind of doesn't look stormy at times. The sun's out right now. It's getting a little steamy out. And hopefully my signal will get me to my garden to show you my rosemary. My rosemary is not as large as it usually is, but it's still there. I'm still using it. I'm still cutting it. And my rosemary in my garden. It's only maybe 2.5 foot high. I have a couple different kinds here, but there it is. It's doing well. So I wanted to show you that. I'm going to get under cover because it kind of looks like a storm might be coming. And we've got some pretty things going on in the ponds. Don't know if you can see. I've got some blooms of my, and here comes the dog. And Gary's walking out here for a minute, but the pond looks very well. And I'm going to come over here and talk to you a little bit about rosemary. So, I told you that Rosmarinus officinalis is the botanical name for rosemary. Let's see if I can't get this fixed up here a little bit. Looks a little crooked. There we go. So, rosemary is a wonderful herb. Most people probably connect it to culinary, to eating, because it's so good. It's in the mint family. Many of the herbs, it's such a large family, the mint family. I've told you that before. So it is in the Lamiaceae family, which is mint family. And rosemary growing in the garden, let's talk about that first. Rosemary is pretty easy to grow. It loves the sun. It is a perennial, and it's an herb from the Mediterranean area. Rosemary does not like to have wet feet. In other words, it doesn't like to be too wet and soggy, or it will get rotted out. There are many different varieties of rosemary. Some are very tall, some are prostrate that creep along the ground. You have some variegated rosemary. There's quite a large different variety of rosemary, and you can just pick one that suits your needs. There is even one that's called barbecue rosemary, very similar to this. This rosemary I actually bought at the grocery store, so I could show you a different kind of rosemary. The stems are very woody and they are kind of squarish, another trait of the mint family. This rosemary happens to be absolutely wonderful that I got at the grocery for $1. So if you need rosemary to cook with and you don't grow it, it's freely available. Not free, that's fine, but it's available. This rosemary is very similar to the variety that's called barbecue rosemary. And the reason it's called barbecue rosemary is you can actually make a brush with it when you're barbecuing on the grill. You can use this rosemary as the brush to put on your barbecue or any kind of sauces that you might be having on your meat. Rosemary is also a great plant to use to create a topiary. It's fun to experiment with. I have one in here that I have planted in here because I wanted to kind of get established in here, because I want to try to turn it into a Christmas tree. Whether that works or not, I don't know. But I know over the holidays, in your nurseries and greenhouses and other stores, at Christmas time, you see rosemary a lot in the shape of bushes, because it is kind of a shrub. Well, it is a shrub, most varieties. And in the Mediterranean, it grows along the sea. Similar, like I said, the olive tree loves to grow by the sea. Rosemary likes to grow by the sea. It likes that moisture and that humidity and the breeze coming in off the tree. It's excellent growing conditions for them. And they do get flowers on them. The original cultivar of rosemary, white flowers, but most of them have purple or bluish flowers on them. And they usually flower in the spring to early summer. If you grow them inside, and you can take them inside your house and you can grow them over the winter. If you have a nice bright window and you can get some sun in, they are fun to grow over the winter. It's good to have herbs in your house over the winter time, and you can get them to flower over the winter a lot of times. They're little tiny orchid-like flowers. Rosemary you can grow from seed. It's a little bit challenging, but you can do so. But the easiest way to propagate and cultivate your rosemary plant is by cuttings. And towards the end of August, September, even now is probably fine, you can propagate is the correct word, sorry, your rosemary. Now, the top part of the rosemary you can see is a little bit more flimsy where the new growth is. When you want to propagate and grow it and get some roots on the bottom, you want to have the thicker stem, the more woodier stem, and you're going to strip those leaves off the bottom because you're going to put it in some water so it grows roots. So I'm just going to break that off at the bottom there, and I have a good 2 inches down there, and I'm going to put it in a little vase of water and let it sit. It might take a couple weeks for you to get roots on the bottom, but it will. It'll root, and then you can plant it. You can plant it for indoor use. You can plant it outside, and you can use that if you want to practice making a topiary inside. Now, wintering rosemary is a challenge. If it gets really, my rosemary lasted all last winter, and if you recall, the Pennsylvania winter that we had this past season was pretty mild, so it lasted all winter. If the winter is very cold, more than likely you will have to purchase a new rosemary in the spring, because in our zone 6A area it is a tender perennial. It doesn't like it really cold. Remember, it's a Mediterranean plant. So that's pretty much, I think I've talked about growing. You can snip it and trim it. The more you snip it off the top, the bushier they'll get. It's pretty easy care, rosemary. It doesn't get many pests, but it will get a fungus if it's too wet. Once in a while, if we have a real long stretch of humid days, which we've kind of had, but everything looks okay on my rosemary. Sometimes you'll see little white spots of mold on there, and you might have to get a fungicide for that. But thankfully, I haven't really had to do that too much. So the stems and the leaves are what is mostly used on the rosemary. When it flowers, you can put the little flowers in salad. Now, rosemary has such a pungent taste. It's kind of a pine-like um, flavor and smell, a little camphorous. Can be a little bitter if you bite into it right off the stem, but it's super delicious. It's great in cooking. The symbolism of rosemary is, I think most of us have heard this, is rosemary for remembrance. Rosemary has such a long line of history, and it has some beautiful tales to it. But rosemary for remembrance, it sharpens your mind, it helps you remember. And what fun it is to read up on some of the history of it. Rings of rosemary have been worn in a bride's hair on their wedding day to symbolize fidelity and love on her wedding day, and of course for the remembrance of the event. And another somber way to use rosemary for remembrance, and it has been used quite often for funerals and celebrations of life for loved ones. Rosemary is often found in funeral arrangements. History has shown that sprigs of rosemary have been put on the casket, and it's for remembrance. It's for us to remember. So it is a beautiful tradition to use that. Rosemary was very, very common in Bible times. The word rosemary is not mentioned once in the Bible with the herbs. And you know, you might have to wonder why that is, because it was growing. It was growing in that area profusely. And I think that's why it wasn't mentioned in the Bible, because it's like mentioning dish soap. I mean, it's there, you use it every day, it's just part of your everyday life. Rosemary was there, growing all around them in beautiful bushes. I could just imagine walking by and smelling them all the time. And it was used as a strewing herb to make their homes smell good. It also helps keep insects away, scatters them about. So they would use it as a strewing herb, of course, in cooking, useful to calm a headache. It was just so prolific that I don't think it was mentioned specifically in the Bible because of that. It was very useful, I said, in the houses, and the history or folklore says, and I like to believe it's true, that it was used in the manger when baby Jesus was put in the manger. It was one of those herbs that was made to make his bed all nice and fluffy, and it also helped keep the insects away from the little child. So I think that hopefully would be a nice, true thing. They would lay their clothing over top of the big bushes of rosemary. I mean, rosemary's bushes are big and beautiful where they grow natively. And when they wash their clothes, they would lay their clothing over those bushes so they would air dry, and then their clothes would smell like rosemary. So that's really cool. Used in incense, placed in tombs often because of the rosemary for remembrance. It was also carried. It was thought that the women that went to go see Jesus's tomb was carrying sprigs of rosemary with them when they went there, and alas, he wasn't there, was he? And one of the really cool traditions or folklore about rosemary, remember I told you that the flowers are white. Well, it has a strong association with the Virgin Mary, and it was said that when the Holy Family was fleeing Herod's soldiers, that Mary spread her blue cloak over the white flowering rosemary, and therefore the little flowers turned blue in her honor. So That's pretty cool. That's a cool. And I've heard that many times over the years about that, the rosemary flowers turning blue because of the Virgin Mary laying her cloak over it. So that's pretty cool. The word remember is mentioned in this historical book, the Bible, 231 times. Well, the word remember is used quite often in our language. So that it's mentioned 231 times is not surprising. It's talked about in many different ways. A lot of ways is you hear, dear Lord, remember me, remember me. I found that a lot in all the scriptures that I found with the word remember, and I was quite astounded by that. It's very interesting. I'll have to look at that a little bit more. But because it's not mentioned specifically in the Bible, I do like to correlate some good faith into what I'm doing, because that's why I started doing this. And it brought me to the book of Job. Some people say Job. I said Job for years. It's not really Job, it's Job. And this book in the Bible is actually considered one of the most beautiful literary works in history. And the story of Job is one of many challenges. This guy was rich and fulfilled, and he had everything he wanted in life, and he had children and a beautiful wife and lots of money. He was wealthy, and he had lots of sheep and livestock, and he was kind. He was such a wonderful person. Everybody admired him, and there came a point in his life where he wanted everyone to have food, and people were saying, well, why are you giving away free food? Shouldn't people pay for it? And he said, well, they could maybe work in my fields and help harvest some things, and I'll give them some free food. He was a really good guy, and then some terrible things, and he loved God, and he had so much faith. Now, this was in the Old Testament, and it happened, I'm gonna say maybe 5 BC, but I don't know. I'm still learning all that kind of good stuff. But so then bad things happened, like I think practically in one day. His children were killed, his livestock were all set free, somebody took them. His wife was pretty angry at him that he was still faithful, still loved God after many, many horrible, terrible things happened to him. And then what happened to him? Then he got leprosy, I believe, and he was sick. And then, he had to have some friends come by and hang out with him and remind him that all the suffering that he's doing, he got to this point where, gosh, he almost gave up. He was like, oh. He had so much faith, and then he got so sick with this leprosy that he was like, okay, I can't do this anymore, God. Why is this happening? Well, then his friends and his buddies shook some sense into him, I think, and he bounced back. His faith, he had this vision, and God spoke to him, and his faith, his deep faith, brought him through. And I think that's such a beautiful story, and all the suffering that he went through. Is not a punishment. And the word remember is in the book of Job, I believe 7 times. And, you know, like, remember that my life is a breath. My eye will never again see good. The eye that beholds me will see me no more. While your eyes are upon me, I shall be gone. That's for a person who might be hurting. And then fond memories of remember. Remember that you fashioned me like clay, and will you turn me into dust again? And don't forget, in the darkness, what you've learned in the light. All these lessons are in through this book of Job, and it's a small book, and I believe that this is one that is worth reading. It's very short, and I am going to sit down this weekend and read it, because I think there's some good lessons in there, and I encourage you to do so as well. So, prosperous man. Went through a lot. So let's see. Rosemary is for remembrance. Let's get back to rosemary and remember what wonderful things it does for us. It is so cool because it has a lot of medical benefits as well as tasting delicious. You can use it to eat, as an herb. You can use it dry or fresh. It's great either way. This is not one of those that's good just fresh. Drying rosemary is very easy. You cut it, you can hang it to dry, you can lay it on a screen, you can just lay it out and let it dry, and then break all those the dried leaves off. I always keep it in a jar that keeps the air out. Here's dried rosemary, so you just want to break them off. And then sometimes I should have got one out earlier. I have rosemary that I make little ringlets out of them, so that when I'm cooking soup or pasta sauce, I just put one of these rings, I just throw it in. Then I don't have to worry about breaking the leaves off, putting it in, because rosemary is it's kind of a stiff herb, and it's almost like eating a stick if it gets in your mouth. So it's good to crush it up. And once you cook with rosemary hot, you can always take that stem out of your soup or your stew or off the top of your meat, and that flavor just permeates your food. So it's really delicious. It's great in sauces, for grilling. This is such a good snack, and it looks bad now, but I did it maybe about an hour ago. And you just take chunks of Parmesan cheese, drizzle a small amount of honey over top of it, and just lay a sprig of rosemary on top of it. Stick it in the microwave till it's all hot and bubbly. It depends on how much you have, but about a minute. And when it comes out, after it's cooled down just a bit, take that sprig of rosemary off the top and eat it on crackers or just so. And that flavor of rosemary is so perfect with the Parmesan cheese and a little tiny bit of drizzle of honey. It's a great snack. It's a great hors d'oeuvre. It's really good to snack on. And so that's just, it's really rosemary potatoes. You could go on and on about cooking with rosemary. Look up some recipes. You will love it. If you haven't cooked with it, try it. The medical uses, of course, I said it strengthens the memory. It sharpens your mind, and has antioxidants. It helps with your immune system. It helps boost that. It's good for circulation. It has iron, calcium, and some vitamins in it, A, C, and B6. The scent itself helps improve your mood, clears your mind, and it helps relieve stress and heartburn. It's great for your skin. It helps protect your skin cells. It's wonderful for hair. It helps an itchy scalp. It helps your hair. It really keeps your hair in really great condition, and it promotes hair growth. It's good for joint pain as well. So you might find some rosemary in some muscle ache balms that you can purchase. Let's see here. I wanted to tell you one other thing that you can do with rosemary that's really easy is you can put your sprigs of rosemary inside your olive oil. And when you do this, when you put rosemary, if you want to make rosemary flavored vinegar or rosemary flavored olive oil, you want to make sure that your sprigs of rosemary are thoroughly dry. You don't want to have water going in with the oil. That will help with spoilage. But put the rosemary sprigs in your olive oil bottle and let it sit for about 30 days. You can let these sit in that oil because it kind of looks pretty, but my experience has led to the oil getting a little bit bitter if you let that rosemary sprig in there way too long. So I strain it off, put it back in, and then I'll put a label on here saying rosemary oil. Now, not only can you cook with that rosemary olive oil, but you can use that rosemary oil on your face. You can use it in shampoos or lotions. You can put a little bit in your bath because rosemary, the scent of rosemary is so invigorating and uplifting. And I will talk to you about rosemary essential oil a bit. Also, I keep telling you, if you're going to use essential oils, talk to somebody who's a professional. I use them a lot, but I don't want to give too much advice without you looking up your own information on essential oils, because you have to respect their potency, but they're really good in your life. Rosemary essential oil is one of my favorites. You can just put a couple drops on a cotton ball and take it to work with you and sit it beside you, because instead of grabbing a Snickers bar in the afternoon when you're feeling a little bit the after lunch tired feeling, or your brain is just tired of thinking, this will perk you up. Just the smell of the rosemary will perk you up, and it'll invigorate your mind and get your brain working, and feels pretty good. You can use that rosemary essential oil. I reuse my pumps from soap dispensers that you buy. This one's a foaming one. I use rosemary essential oil and a very light scented store brand hand soap, liquid hand soap, a third of the bottle for soap, a teaspoon of rosemary essential oil, fill the rest up with water, and you have your foaming hand wash with wonderful smell of rosemary in it. And the rosemary really does overpower the scent of that might be in the store brand soap. However, you can buy unscented, I believe, but I can smell the rosemary most. I just mix it all together. You can put it in your body wash if you wish. Good stuff, really good stuff. Rosemary is wonderful. Let's see here. We are getting close to being done talking about rosemary. I'm hoping you're having a good day. A little saying says, where rosemary flourishes, the lady rules. I love that. So that's a pretty good little saying there that came from history. You can use rosemary as a decorative herb too. You can make little wreaths if you have a great big rosemary bush. It makes wonderful wreaths. Let's see here. I'm sure I probably forgot something, but I wanted to remind you that the rosemary lime finishing salt, I have a little video up when I did my, what did I do? I forget which herb I did then. Well, I did. It's here somewhere. So that is beautiful, wonderful rosemary. I hope you go try it if you've never tried it before, and cook with it. Try a little essential oils. Try to make a topiary, and don't forget, check out that book of Job in the Bible. It might teach you something, inspire you. So I think that I'm just about finished. I want to tell you that on Sunday at St. John's, we are not having our church services at St. John's. We are having outdoor worship service in a pavilion on North Lemon Street in Mountville. Anyone is welcome to come. It's going to be outside in the pavilion at 10:15 is when the worship service starts. Now we are having a congregational picnic right after that service, which if you didn't sign up, because we needed to know how much food to bring, but you're still welcome to stay if you want to pack your own little lunch, because I don't want to run out of food, because we have it all prepackaged because of COVID. So we're making it a very safe environment, but if you want to stay for that, you're more than welcome to do so. So, ending prayer for y'all. Heavenly Father, help me to be a wise gardener who will carefully sow only good seeds today. Guide my attitude and my deeds, that they will show glory for you. And if I sow a bad seed by accident, remind me to pluck it up right away before it spoils the fertile soil. Well, I hope you guys have a great day and enjoy the weekend. Take care. And next week, we're going to be talking about Job's tears. So that's why if you look at that book, it might connect. All right, take care, everyone. See you later. Bye.